What is up, and let us jump straight into it. Remote team building ideas. Now, if you know what happened about a year ago, something caused the whole world to shift. And as a result of that, teams started working completely differently. In this video, we're going to be talking about how you can set up an efficient and effective way to build a remote team that also grows, has a good culture, because as we know, we were not built to work completely remote. Some layer of communication is needed. So with that being said, let's jump straight into it. Now, as far as the future of work goes, there's many ideas out there, but from what I generally see, future's work is most likely going to be a hybrid model where people are going to have the option to work from home certain days in the week and in the office certain days a week. We've seen that from commercial real estate licensing, and we've also seen that from the general trends that people have taken from large enterprise companies to smaller firms, where they've said that, look, we will offer people to go remote, but that does not necessarily mean it will be full-time. They will still need to be coming into the office a certain set number of days. However, they will be given the flexibility to go ahead and work from home a certain number of days within the week. So the hybrid model is something that is being taken in. Now, the hybrid model comes with its advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of a hybrid model is people do get to go ahead and spend time at home, be with family, enjoy that efficiency you get working from home. The disadvantage obviously is that it's not here nor there, where some days you're working in the office, some days you're not, and teams need to become a little more collaborative as well as organized in terms of coordination. There will be situations where someone needs to be in the room at the same time as someone else does. However, they might not be working in the same day in the office as the other person is. So how do you organize that? Now, with all that being said, let's talk about the apps that come into place in terms of improving remote team building. Now, in terms of finding remote team members, there's heaps of tools out there, and I will cover this very quickly. The first way you can obviously find team members is Freelancer and Upwork. That is the easiest way to find remote team members, contractors, and so on and so forth. The other thing you can do is use tools like remote.com to go ahead and help you manage your entire financing, your remote management, your HR, and so on and so forth. That is a quick, easy example I can give you. The other places you can find remote team members is usually on Facebook, Facebook groups. You can also go ahead and find people on communities such as developer communities if you're trying to hire someone on a developer environment. However, Upwork and Freelancer as well as Fiverr tend to be some good places to go ahead and find remote team members. Now, with that being said, let's talk about the three ways that apps tentatively work in the space. There are three forms of apps that tend to exist in the remote working environment. One is always-on applications. The other ones are asynchronous communication tools. The third are more so chat communication tools. We'll jump into how each of these things will essentially help you build and create a fostered environment that helps teams love work, enjoy, as well as keep that collaborative and camaraderie going within your company. The biggest issues that have come through after talking to multiple companies who have been fully remote as a result of COVID. Now, I'm not talking about companies that have been remote first pre-COVID, but as a result of you know what. Because of that, what ends up happening is you end up having a lot of team members not being too happy with the way they operate because the camaraderie is just not there. The lack of casual conversation is costing companies lots of money, including revenue dips as well, statistically so and so. The biggest issue people have come to see is people who've joined companies whilst this issue has been happening is that they have not been given the opportunity to meet people outside of their circle. That means as teams are small and team members are joining new companies, they are exposed to just 3 or 4 people, and that culture and that bonding just does not exist beyond just their immediate reports or immediate teammates. And that is a bit of an issue, and most people are trying to solve for that. And we're going to talk about a few ideas and apps that people have bought up and invented as a result of this entire issue to go ahead and solve for problems like this. There are 2 main competitors in the market right now that are in the always-on environment. Now, what I mean by always on is essentially 2 examples, which is Tandem.chat and Jam. And what they exactly do is give people the opportunity to be synced in. So you can pretty much go ahead and use the ability of those apps to be synchronized with Google Docs, Visual Studio Code, or whatever application you're using, and people can jump in and out of rooms and communicate. It's almost like pretty much tapping someone's shoulder. So it is almost like an always on approach. Your microphone is not on, but people will tentatively jump in and create a conversation with you. This is very separate from creating a Slack call or organizing a meeting where you need to message the person, set up a call, or jump on a call with them. This is a lot more conversational, where you can pretty much just see if they're in a certain room, join that room, and pretty much join a conversation with them. So that is the advantage they have, which is the always on approach. Now, the advantage and disadvantage of this is the always on approach makes it more collaborative for people to communicate. The disadvantage is essentially it's quite interruptive for people to communicate with each other, as a result causing a lot of inefficiencies, which is what was the problem to begin with when you were working in the office. The other thing we've seen is the rise and growth of asynchronous communication tools, which is where we've seen apps like Loom absolutely crush it, and apps like Remote Workly as well as Grapevine doing really well on the stand-up and asynchronous communication environment. What asynchronous communication essentially means is pretty much what it's self-disclaimatory, which is you can pretty much go ahead and record a video or type a message or express something that you're talking about via video or voice and share with the other team member, and they can watch it at their own comfort. If you've got a remote team that is across multiple time zones, they do not need to be in the same conversation at the same time. Instead, we will simply go ahead and create and record a video, and they will watch it at their own comfort, introducing the whole world of asynchronous video meeting communications. And what this also actually has led to do is reduction in Zoom fatigue, which has been a big issue where people have just gone really tired of jumping from one Zoom call to another Zoom call again and again and again as a result of all these online meetings, because meetings have just become the convenient de facto. Now, if you remember, I mentioned this issue which has to come around people not being able to communicate beyond their direct report or direct team. There have been really cool apps. One that I'd like to mention is something called Icebreaker. Icebreaker essentially takes a clump of people, 40-50 people, into a particular room and pretty much just randomizes and connects them, whilst also getting some key information about that person, their likes, hobbies, habits, and you can chat with that person for about 3 to 4 minutes and then you shuffle to another person. It's almost like speed dating for team members within a company, and I've seen that work really well, as I've got a remote team and my team's been remote well before the so just something for you to consider as well. The app's called Icebreaker, and I'll probably put a link in the description for you to look at if you want to try the app. Now, I've spoken to multiple people, multiple leaders, HR managers, and experience from myself as well in terms of how to create culture, motivate your team, and keep everyone happy during this period, which is going to stay on for a while, unfortunately, depending on which part of the world you are. And there are some key ways you can do this strategically and methodically, and I think this will work really well for you. Like I mentioned, encourage the conversation cycle between team members who are not necessarily connected with each other in the same group. Ensure that people that are onboarded onto teams in this period are welcomed really friendly and really well. That means it's a high responsibility of the HR manager not to just introduce people via Slack channel, but introduce them periodically, methodically, as well as often to other people, and be that beacon of person. A championship or almost like a principal student or a buddy program will be excellent for you to encourage and introduce in this time and age for people to go ahead and meet other people in this workspace. The other thing is things like Icebreaker do end up working really well. The other thing you can actually do is also introduce essentially yearly retreats, or monthly, fortnightly, weekly, quarterly, whatever works for you based on your budget. Retreats for people in their locality. So if your team is completely remote across the whole world, you can see clumps of areas where people are close together, depending on different areas, and make sure that they catch up in a particular space, and then you and your team also catch up wherever you're nearby in a particular space, and essentially hold conversations with each other. Celebrate wins. This is going to be a big one because everyone wants to be motivated and encouraged, and it's quite hard to do so when you're in this particular environment. So celebrate any wins you can. Create a channel on Slack or whatever communication tool you're using where people can basically share their smallest wins, and make sure you foster a culture of encouragement within that space. With that being said, you also want to make sure there is time for zoning out. Do something like no meeting Wednesdays or no meeting Thursdays, where essentially there's no meetings that happen on that particular day, so your team members can focus purely on delivering and making sure they're productive. That way it makes sure you got rid of any Zoom fatigue or issues in that space where people feel like they're always on and on camera. One thing you need to realize is that as human beings, we are very receptive to body language. It's almost 70% of a communication engine happens with body language. And since we can't essentially see someone's body language across a screen as much, we're overcompensating by paying attention, and our eyes are going too focused on what each person is doing and how they're reacting to the words, right? As people, we tend to react to what the other person is reacting towards and then respond accordingly. And since we don't have that stimuli or that feedback engine, we as human beings are overcompensating, which is where Zoom fatigue comes from. The other thing I can encourage you to do is be heavily dependent upon asynchronous tools wherever you can. Again, to prevent that that Zoom fatigue environment where people are communicating and over communicating more than they need to. Asynchronous tools also help with process and system creation so that people's patterns are not interrupted when they're working. In case people are working across different time zones, if it's someone's lunchtime, other person just woken up, they don't need to interrupt their lunch to go ahead and have a conversation with them. If you have an asynchronous way, you build a company asynchronous first, people are used to the fact that there will be delays in terms of communication unless there's a blocker, in which case the blocker needs to be addressed fast. And the last thing you can do that I've seen work really well is essentially send food and drinks to your team members however you do so. And once you've done that, even Uber Eats works. Pretty much set up a call where everyone jumps on the call at the same time and you're pretty much having a casual conversation, meeting, watching a movie, playing games, whatever it can be. Make sure that your team is having fun. It is very important for you to check in on your team's mental health, especially in this day and time where people tend to be boxed into their homes. Whether it's a hybrid environment, not a hybrid environment, it is your job as a founder of the company, or if you're someone who's working in a company where you feel like you can have a better culture, this video is for you. Share it with the team member. That's all for this video. If you've liked this, I'd love for you to go ahead and click subscribe, like and share, because it will help yourself as well as other people in the world who are also struggling in this particular time, and it will also help me spread the message with the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you again in another video. Take care.